It's all about this document. Everything we're about to share with you about this morning. So I want to thank you for your kind words of introduction. And coming up, Father humorously asked me whether I recognize that figure in there, and I said I didn't quite recognize who he is. But distinguished guests, Your Excellency, all of you, my brothers and sisters, I think copies of the text are now being distributed to enable you a little bit more easily to follow what I'll be trying to say. But let me extend and bring to you the warm greetings of our council, the Pontifical Councils of Justice and Peace. On its behalf, I want to thank you all for this invitation, especially you, the group of the business leaders, and then the Catholic young executives, business executives here for this kind invitation. And on behalf of the council, we wish this meeting great success. My dear friends, at the beginning of this millennium, on the eve of the new millennium, Pope John Paul II directed our attention to the Second Vatican Council as a sure compass by which to take our bearings in the century that was then beginning. Indeed, the Second Vatican Council recommended that the Church enter into dialogue with the world about its so very many different problems as an expression of a solidarity and respectful affection for the human family to which she belongs. This is from Gaudium et Spes, the third paragraph. Because the Church believed that nothing that is genuinely human fails to find an echo in the heart of all followers of Christ. Indeed, the distinguished audience, as you may know, or some of you at least may know, everything about this document and everything about our council began with the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, concluding in 1965 and 7. And as you may know, at the beginning of that meeting, of that great meeting of the Church, Pope John the 23rd, at the beginning of that meeting, said that he wanted to throw open the windows of the Church so that the world outside can see into the Church, and so that the Church can also see the world outside. That was a signal sounded by Pope John the 23rd for a new relationship building between the Church and society. And out of that initiative, which then was followed through the council, several levels of relationship with the world were built up. And our own council, the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, was born out of this desire to have the Church establish a relationship with society and with the world. So the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, as its name suggests, it's not only dealing with questions of justice and peace, but it actually follows all issues related with the social order. Everything of the social order is of interest to this council. And so when the issues then become economic and financial, that's what we follow and study. When the issue becomes human trafficking and modern-day slavery, that's what we follow and study. When the issue becomes politics and good governance, that's what we follow and study. when the issue becomes work and different forms of labor, that's what we follow instead. So our concern is about social issues, anything that makes human existence meaningful. And the main focus is placing the human person in the center of everything that we engage and we get ourselves to. So, leading to this small document is some such concern. So, the role of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace in the production of this handbook, The Vocation of the Business Leader, makes manifest the great and the growing interest of the church in providing accompaniment and guidance for the world of business. She believes that the thing to do is not to appoint accusing fingers at business leaders and the world of business. Rather, she believes that the thing to do is to help professionals understand and to act upon the social implications of faith within business. The church wants to encourage and to help entrepreneurs in these difficult and challenging times to meet their great responsibilities in society in a just and a fitting manner. And so, last January 2014, I had the honor of being sent with a message of Pope Francis to Davos, to the World Economic Forum. And in that message of the Pope to that distinguished audience of business people and all four shades gathered there, Pope Francis expressed great appreciation and admiration for the world of business and the business people gathered there. He expressed great appreciation for their skills and for their competence. And having expressed appreciation for that, he then addressed a challenge. Please use your skills and competence with which you have distinguished yourselves already as entrepreneurs and business people. Put those skills and talents now at the service of the poor and the needy. So it's one, a recognition of the skills and competences, and an invitation then to place this at the service of the poor and the service of the needy. This is marked the pattern of the church's relationship with the world of business and with business people. It is no more accusing fingers that entrepreneurs are like this and business people. That is over. It is now providing accompaniment and encouraging them to basically exercise this great noble task of theirs, which we shall now in this talk refer to as a vocation, and then encourage them to exercise this vocation for the well-being of humanity. So what I shall proceed now to do is to explain the fundamental ideas concerning values for business in the light of Christian faith, the Christian or the church's social teaching, and especially the teaching of Pope Benedict XVI about God's gift in our lives. Teaching which he set out in an encyclical he published in 2009 with the title Caritas in Veritate. Then I shall outline the main points of this small booklet, which are grouped according to the movement from seeing, judging, and acting. And then I shall make a plea for dedicated faithfulness to the best that business has to offer the world, especially in its service to the poorest, the marginalized, and the excluded. For in his Mass of Installation, Pope Francis addressed all those who were gathered in the St. Peter's Square, including all who exercise responsibility in economics, in political life, and in social life, and all men and women of goodwill. In the same spirit, and the same spirit of openness and dialogue, all of you from your various walks of life have gathered here and wished so also in the same attitude and spirit to address these few words by way of introducing and presenting this book. So, we go on to our second slide now. Vocation means a calling. And it was in the encyclical of Pope Benedict XVI, Caritas in Veritate, where business was first presented in terms of a vocation. Vocation means a calling which comes from God. And it is interesting and significant that the Holy Father applies this to business and business people, because the very many who are here and are familiar with religious life and church and seminary vocation, a lot of people think that when you talk about vocation, you're talking about people who want to become priests or people who want to become brothers and sisters. They're the ones who are supposed to have a vocation. That's a very limited use of that expression. And in this small booklet, we apply this word to all of us, to everybody in human society. And we address, especially in this small booklet, invite business people to consider what they do in terms of a vocation, a calling from God, a calling that has its deep meaning from God Himself. Therefore, the meaning of everything that exists is determined with reference to God. And so accordingly, the sense and the value of human activity are not fully discovered without reference to the God of creation, the God of our lives. All human activity affects the human person, affects man, his existence, and his world. All such activity must then be related to God. By it, man, who is created in the image and likeness of God, continues God's work of creation and contributes to it. This is the crucial affirmation. We continue God's work of creation and we contribute to God's work of creation. As we shall have occasion to repeat this several times in this presentation, the role of business is not simply contributing, it's not simply continuing, but most importantly, contributing to God's work of creation. And if I may anticipate, a central point that we shall be affirming already now, God created the trees. He didn't create furniture. It is businessmen who create furniture from wood. God created sand and silicon. God did not create crystal and glass. It takes human industry to convert silicon and sand into glass and crystal. And so we can go on and on and on. This is plastic. And it is from fossil fuel and all. So that's how business contributes and continues God's work of creation. And it is precisely in this sense that we invite business people to see what they do in terms of a vocation. Something that derives from God and continues the work of God's creation. So business, in fact, is a vocation, and a very noble vocation, provided that those engaged in it see themselves challenged by a greater meaning in life. Such men and women are able to serve more effectively the common good and to make the goods of this world more accessible to all. So business then belongs to such a human activity. And entrepreneurs should see themselves as called by God to exercise their necessary and important skills and activities in order to assist in continuing God's work of creation. And so, properly understood, business leadership is indeed a calling, a vocation, and a very noble role that is exercised. With all of these words then, we keep repeating and saying this several times over, because the attitude is being that the church is against business people. The church is criticized and critical towards business people. It's not quite that. From the Second Vatican Council, the church has invited its pastors and all its members to view business in a different perspective, in different light. That's why it calls business now a very noble vocation, because it contributes and continues God's work of creation. And that is the perspective in which this small booklet is developed, and it is in that we wish to carry on this reflection that we share with you this morning. Now, saying all of that, we still want to add that we recognize that business leaders are faced with intense competition and increasing pressure to be efficient and to be profitable on a daily basis. It belongs to the world of business to be competitive, to seek to be efficient, to make the shareholders and all of those behind you whom you have to report to also happy and comfortable. Without these qualities, business will not survive. But we also know that competition, efficiency, and profitability and the logic of the market are not enough to foster the development of people in the world of work. What is needed is the logic of gift. This is the contribution that Pope Benedict made. The specific contribution that he makes to this reflection is that to introduce also not only the logic of the market, but also the logic of gift. And what he means by that, we shall see shortly. According to Pope Benedict, the logic of gift arises in Caritas in Veritate, where he says every Christian is called to practice charity in truth, in a manner corresponding to his vocation and according to the degree of influence that he wields in society. Then the second point, the principle of generosity and gratuitousness and the logic of gift must find their place within normal economic activities and in all forms of commercial relationships. The logic of gift then highlights the importance of acknowledging that our very lives and the entire world we inhabit are gifts freely given by God. And this gift should inform how we act in our own business endeavors. It is this gift, this law of gift, that humanizes and civilizes business, where business people see themselves as stewards rather than owners, their wealth as common rather than just private goods, and their employees as persons rather than instruments of protection, instruments of production. This challenging teaching of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace to collaborate in took place in two interesting conferences, which the professor who introduced me hinted at. When in 2009, Pope Benedict XVI published this encyclical, Caritas in Veritate, there were several issues that came out of which made us organize a few seminars. One of them was with the University of Southern California, and the thing was to look at the concept of gift, which the Holy Father talks about in this encyclical. And then, it was not just gift, but the reference to this as charity. And they came to this with the observation that in the U.S., every soup kitchen is called charity. And therefore, the use of that expression doesn't necessarily entail and convey the depth of meaning with which the Holy Father was using that expression. So we needed to explore how we can use that expression, giving to it the intensity of meaning that the Pope wanted to put in that expression. Then we organized another seminar with the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, and that was to consider the sense of what the Pope refers to in the encyclical as the logic of gift and the principle of gratuitousness, and how that can be applied in the world of business. From these two seminars, the council felt with the members and the participants that it was probably going to be very necessary to put together these thoughts in a small booklet that would be useful to business people, to provide some type of guidelines or guidance to business people. That is the type of reflection that led to the production of this small booklet. So a small team of the participants were put together with people from all over the world. From Italy, from the University of Milan, we had Simona Beretta. From the University of the Angelicum in Rome, we had Helen Alford. Then from University of St. Thomas, Minnesota, we had Michael Norton. And then from the University in Houston. So we put together this team with Unia Park, Europe, with who's there now, Mr. Pierre Lecoq is here, with this group. So they crafted the original document which fed into this. And when they produced the draft, we circulated the draft among the scholars and the business people in our office. And the final product is this book, which is now before you, now translated into 16 different languages. What we're presenting over here is the 15th, because there's another translation in Chinese in Hong Kong, which probably, God willing, we'll find time to present someday in the future. And so it exists in all of these languages: English, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, and the different Ukrainian, Hungarian, Russian, and all of the different languages. So 15 of them exist, including Arabic. There's a translation of this also in Arabic, which at a similar setting in Beirut, Christian businessmen and Islamic businessmen came together in a morning session like this to present the same booklet, and we had a chance again to introduce this to our Islamic business partners, and they also shared their reflection on this with us. So this booklet is made a few rounds around the world, and all of it is to try to, to make it become profitable. Now, the danger for business people, and indeed for all of us, is that too often we take our gifts as our own private possessions, rather than as gifts that go through us to serve others. In Catholic social teaching, this logic was expressed in Gaudium et Spes already at the Second Vatican Council. And the language used over there was this: man who is the only creature on earth, this should be slide 6, man who is the only creature on earth which God willed for itself can fully find himself only through a sincere gift of himself. So Benedict XVI explains this, that this placement of the logic of gift within business is one of the great challenges before us. And if this logic of gift fails to animate business and its institutions, which is where much of the world works, we will do great damage to the larger society. Pope Francis adds his own voice later, saying, "The great danger in today's world, pervaded as it is by consumerism, is the desolation and anguish born of a complacent yet covetous heart, the feverish pursuit of frivolous pleasure, and a blunted conscience. Whenever our interior life becomes caught up in its own interests and concerns, there is no longer room for others, and there's no place for the poor. But God's voice is no longer heard. The quiet joy of his love is no longer felt, and the desire to do good also fades away." So, taking up the challenge, an important insight of the vocation document is the conviction that business people are called not just to do business, but to become a particular kind of leader in business. Like any other kind of work, business must confront what John Paul II called the subjective dimension of work. This means that work changes not only the external world, and work is not simply what we produce, but work also forms the personality of the individual who exercises and does work. Work changes not only this external world, but also the heart and the soul and the minds of the worker. Our actions at work, as well as in life, shape our destiny. They move us to a place with eternal implications. And to these external implications, the Vocation Handbook points at the very, very beginning. And it says, in the gospel, Jesus tells us that from everyone who has been given much, much will also be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much will also be asked. So business people have been given great resources, and the Lord asks them to do great things. This is their vocation. Having been endowed and gifted with much, they are invited to also imitate God in giving much. This gifted character of business carries social implications. Business leaders have significant means to undertake something, and with this means, a corresponding responsibility. This small booklet, then, the vocation text, sees business not only in terms of a legal minimalism, meaning don't cheat, don't lie, or don't deceive. It's not just that. It's not simply a question of exhorting business people not to cheat, to be fair, and not to lie about anything. That's not what this booklet is about. But rather as a vocation that makes an irreplaceable contribution to material and even spiritual well-being of humankind. It is to a more loftier sense of vocation that we seek to invite business people to recognize and to accept their own roles as business people. It is about a meaningful life that opens the business person to God's will, and not simply their own will in the day-to-day decisions of ordinary life, which gives us the capacity to share goods in common and to build a community. So with all of this said, let us, with slide 7, look at some of the fundamental and foundational principles that we evoke in this small booklet. This vision of business is grounded in the social doctrine of the church. At its center is the fundamental dignity of all human beings, because we are all made in the image and the likeness of God. This expresses God's infinite love for us. Faith denies, or because of our faith, we're not willing to simply wish and, go with untruth, bondage, injustice, and strife and conflict. Rather, we wish to appreciate and to embrace values such as truth, freedom, justice, and peace. Clearly, then, these values are not unique to only Catholic faith or the Christian religion, but these are values which are shared by a lot of, to a great extent, by the monotheistic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and several other religions. But because they are grounded in our divinely and lovingly created human nature, as taught by Catholic social doctrine, we have an absolutely firm response when such values are challenged or denied. And so Catholic social teaching enunciates many other principles, some of which are especially pertinent to the world of business. For example, the principle of the common good. The fact that the human person was created and coexists in society precisely to pursue its common good. The goods or resources of the world have a destiny. Sometimes this is formulated as the universal destination of the goods of the earth. And creation is a gift to the whole of humanity, not just a part of it. And we are called to act in solidarity with those who lack access to these goods, with a large portion of humanity who suffer in the midst of plenty. So this vision then of business is not without several significant tensions, and it's not easy to execute in today's world. There are many external obstacles that can prevent a business leader from shaping institutions in this way, such as corruption. Yesterday, at the opening, at the welcoming dinner, we were privileged to have, we were introduced, a gentleman in charge of, corruption in this land was introduced to all of us. There is also the problem of the absence of the rule of law. Several communities where the rule of law does not prevail, this becomes a big challenge also to business. And then tendencies towards greed or a sense of poor leadership of ourselves. All of this become chief among the very many obstacles. But the biggest obstacle from our point of view is the business leader himself living a divided life. And that divided life is when a business person who is a Christian and a believer finds time to live his faith and then also to live his business and cannot see how to bring the two together. This is the divided life that besets and becomes a big obstacle to a lot of business people. At one moment, they live their lives as believers, and another moment, they live their lives as business people. And integrating one into the other, or the two, becomes an obstacle. And so the point of this booklet is to help business people bridge this obstacle or overcome this obstacle, bringing the two together. And the method that it evokes to do that is to lead business people to go through a 3-stage reflection. Very popular 3-stage reflection, which involves seeing, judging, and then acting. And so these are the 3-point reflection that this booklet offers to business people as a help to help them overcome some of the challenges and obstacles to their lives as business people. These challenges demand more just and human structures, regulations, policies, and practices, and they demand virtues from business leaders. Those habits of work that make business people and the world better. For the business leader, one of the most important virtues is practical wisdom. How to be wise in practical affairs. Our handbook then is structured according to a framework that shows how a prudential leader can encounter the world of business by seeing the situation in which he lives and exercises his business, by judging the challenges of that situation with reference to his own and her own faith and the principles of the church's social teaching, and finally acting based on decisions and the conclusions that he draws. And we just briefly explain these 3 stages one by one, though it is clear that they are interconnected and very much related. So the first one is seeing. That looks like a Thailandese kid, right? So the first one is seeing. The challenge and opportunities in the world of business are complicated by factors, both good and evil. 4 of these major factors are signs of the time making. In fact, as you know now, in the financial market, computer systems are now designed that does not even allow humans intervention to decide. The computer programs themselves make decisions about financial trading independent without any human situation. So fast are the data and information that it becomes wanting to go through all of this person sometimes becomes a burden for the businessman. The rise also of the financial sector has created ways to leverage capital to make it more productive. At the same time, it has intensified tendencies to commoditize all business relationships and to reduce them to one single value, the value of price, whether that is the monetary value of the firm, the price of a product, or the cost of labor. All these tendencies emphasize maximization of profit, short-term gains at the expense of working for the common good sometimes. Then there are challenges, cultural challenges which come with this. Doing business in Thailand is certainly not like doing business in any country in Europe, in Africa, or even the United States. All of them do not simply involve investing money, but also appreciation for a lot of cultural values and habits of people. So cultural changes in our area have led to increased individualism, more family breakdowns and utilitarian preoccupations with oneself and what is good for me. As a result, we might have more private goods, but are lacking significantly in common goods. Business leaders then increasingly focus on maximizing wealth. Employees develop attitudes of entitlement, and consumers demand instant gratification at the lowest possible prices. As values have become relative and rights more important than duties, the goal of serving the common good is often lost. So this and the very many other challenges that faces the businessman still means that he has to deal with this. It's not a question of wishing them away. He has to deal with this, and he deals with this by exercising discernment, by judging, in what is at stake, and then that's where we hope the principles of the church's social teaching and the faith guidance of the business person helps him to judge and to discern what to do in that situation. So the second thing about seeing all the challenges that they face is to judge, to discern on what to do in the challenging situations of life or the world of business. So the principles of respect for human dignity and the pursuit of common good are the foundations of the church's social teaching. With regard to the economy, they can be rephrased into 3 interconnected groups of objectives and characteristics that define the goods of business. The first objective is to produce goods which are really good. So, good goods, if you want. Because not every good is good. If you come from my part of the world, which receives a lot of stuff shipped from some far off a country, then probably we just say this for the anybody who deals with products from China knows that there are at least 4 grades. There are products which are destined for the U.S. market, and they face the toughest forms of whatever. Then there are products destined for the European market. That's the next. Then products still, third, and then the 4th one will be product destined for some other markets in the south, mostly Africa and so. So the quality is not, you find the same item by responding to different quality demands because they are required and they ask for. If you drive an SUV, you know the SUV cars, if you're in the United States, no SUV uses diesel. Every SUV in the United States uses petrol. If you come to Europe, you have smaller cars and SUVs which use diesel. US will not allow small, cars to use diesel. They would all use, petrol. But elsewhere, smaller cars can use diesel and go. So the demands depends on the market, and then that's also how the factories respond to these goods. So the first thing we're talking about is to ensure that the goods we produce are really good. Business attend to the needs of the world by producing goods that are truly good and services that truly serve. They make solidarity with the poor a facet of their service to the common good by being alert for opportunities to serve otherwise deprived and underdeserved populations and people in significant need. The second objective is businesses should provide good work. By organizing good and productive work, businesses contribute to the community by fostering special dignity of human work. Businesses are communities and not mere commodities. Further, they contribute to the full human development of employees by applying the principle of subsidiarity. Business leaders need to trust and invest in the talents and capabilities of their staff and their workers. By the principle of subsidiarity, then, they allow workers to influence the overall direction of the business and accept their right to participate in intermediary bodies and even in unions. The third objective is good wealth. So goods which are good, work which is good, and then the wealth produced should also be good wealth. By being good stewards of the resources given to them, businesses create sustainable wealth through efficient and product processes, producing healthy profit. But creating wealth in a business is insufficient without the wider context of stewardship for the natural and the cultural environment. And without just distribution to all stakeholders who have made the wealth possible, such as the employee, the customer, the investor, and even the consumer, and the larger community. All of this help in the production of wealth for the businessman. Business does not produce if there's no market. And when there's no market to consume items produced, business enterprises do not produce anything. So, all of this, the needs of all of this need to be taken on board in considering what ultimately will be referred to as the wealth that business produces. And so, before we come to the third stage, which is after seeing and judging, the third stage would be to act. I'll just skip a small thing about subsidiarity that you can read, for your own self, and then skip on to the third thing about. So subsidiarity is just that, a point that we made. It's a value that is necessary in governance, but also necessary in business structures. And it requires just a business leader to trust in the talents, endowments, and skills of lower people down the chain, the employment chain. And not simply to trust them with whatever, to also invest in their training and improvement upon their skills so they can contribute more meaningfully and effectively to the work of the business. The third, after seeing and after judging, would be to act. So in the vocation document, we've taken this principle of subsidiarity and have applied its insight to the internal organization of businesses. In well-defined functions, the front line and the middle level should exercise authority and should receive the needed training and resources in order to succeed. And so in a time when knowledge and information as well as their acquisition and processing are becoming increasingly important factors of production, applying the principle of subsidiarity can play a very crucial role in any business. Acting becomes the business leader's way of putting into practice the aspirations and the discernment, the fruits of his own discernment. They can let more than financial success motivate them. They can let more than the logic of the market orient them, and they can receive and accept what God has done for them also as a factor. They can let this gifted life inform and order the way they give and enter into communion with others in business. And so, when business people integrate prayer, contemplation, the day of the Lord, scriptures, the gift of spiritual life, the virtues and the ethical social principles into their life and work, they can overcome the divided life we talked about and receive the grace to foster the integral development of all business stakeholders. And this broad, deep life of faith can strengthen and embolden business leaders to respond to the world's challenges, not with fear, not with cynicism, but with the virtues of faith, hope, and then love. So this small handbook aims then to encourage and to inspire business leaders and all stakeholders in business to see the challenges and the opportunities in their work, to judge them according to ethical social principles illumined by the religious vision of the world and their work, and then to act as leaders who serve not only their business and their desire for profit, but also who serve God, the God of their lives. It offers two checklists at the end, this booklet. It offers two checklists that are very well aimed at aids to action. The first is a set of practical principles for business that are solidly based on respect for human dignity and commitment to the common good. They summarize the discussion of good work, good goods, and then good wealth. Meeting the needs of the world by developing goods and services, businesses contribute to the common good by producing goods that are truly good and services that truly serve. Businesses maintain solidarity with the poor by being alert for opportunities to serve deprived and underserved populations and people in need. Secondly, organizing good, decent, and productive work. Businesses make a contribution to the community by fostering the special dignity of human work. Businesses that embrace subsidiarity provide opportunities for employees to exercise their gifts, their talents, as they contribute to the mission of the organization. And thirdly, generating sustainable wealth and distributing it justly, businesses model stewardship of the resources, whether capital, human, or environmental, under their control. Businesses are just in the allocation of benefits to all stakeholders, employees, customers, investors, suppliers, and the community. The second discernment checklist for the business leader, nearly 36 questions to help business leader to deeply examine their own lives and the behavior of the organizations in the light of the church's social teaching. I must say that when we attacked this second checklist, some thought that we were making this almost a catechism and objected, but some also came back and expressed great appreciation for this second checklist, so we decided to leave it and for the judgment of whoever will use it. If they find it useful, fine. If they don't find it useful, they can always skip it. But these, the second checklist are questions really connected, really connect the previous good ideas with the daily reality of each one's life. So, having left it in there, we encourage as long as we can to ask the questions which are put inside there and help, invite people to look at them and see how useful they find them. And recognizing that I've held you in captivity for too long, I just try to draw a conclusion to this with the 17th slide. So we've introduced the main elements of the vocation of the business leader. We begin by referring to business as a vocation, but we do not only remain on the spiritual whatever thing of vocation, but we also recognize that a certain appreciation for what business people go through every day, the challenges and the competition, everything we talked about, and then provided the 3 steps of seeing, judging, and acting as a help for business people to go through, and the challenges of making their lives correspond to their faith and the social doctrine of the church. So we've introduced the main elements of vocation. We've touched on basic principles of Catholic social doctrine and the beautiful logic of gift that applies to the calling of business leaders to help fulfill God's plan when they provide good goods, good work, and when they serve as stewards of good wealth. We hope that these introductory words will make you curious about wanting to take up this book and take a look at it without making, an advert or campaign for the sale of this book. But it may be good if you want to take it and then just, page quickly through to see whether they say anything meaningful to you. Thailand, where we gathered now, is a nation rich in religious diversity. I'm aware that many of you in the hall today may be followers of other faiths and other religions than the Christian religion whose principles are evoked in this book. But also I'm encouraged by what Pope Paul VI had said some time ago in one of his encyclicals, Octogesimo Adveniam, saying that in certain situations, Christians are encouraged to meet with their non-Christian partners and discern about how well and how best to deal with challenges which can confront all of them commonly in society. So trusting that, we still thought we could come up with this and then offer it also, just as we did in Beirut, place it in the hands of people who are not even Christians. Trusting that through the dialogue that ensues, we'd be able to address our living together and our coexistence in society peacefully and warmly. So if the vision of this handbook is to be realized in Asia, it will require a deep sharing of insights and experiences between people of all faiths who are represented in the various countries. It will, in other words, involve genuine interreligious dialogue. The Catholic Church is committed to such interreligious dialogue and indeed takes delight in sincere sharing between people whose beliefs and customs may be different from those we share and those which are expressed in this booklet. From the Second Vatican Council 50 years ago, the experience of the Church has been to encourage dialogue at least on 2 essential levels: dialogue of life and dialogue of action. In dialogue of life, people strive to live in an open and neighborly spirit, sharing their joys and their sorrows, their human problems and their preoccupations. To share is to exchange openly, even deeply and to try and to understand without judging, much less correcting, the other people's world and other people's experiences. Then there is also the dialogue of action. Christians and others collaborate for the integral development and the liberation of people. The image here is working shoulder to shoulder without being too concerned about one another's premises or motivations. Thus, the dialogue of action is realistic, pragmatic, focusing on the practical goal rather than on the differences of convictions. So you can see that both these dialogues, that of life and that of action, are going to be necessary, not just here in Thailand or Rome, but all over the world. If as business leaders, we are to find ways of doing all of these good things, dialogue involves. And dialoguing must become a crucial part of this. And in that case, dialogue involves skills we all have to learn. They do not come easily, especially these days when it can seem a whole lot safer to keep distance from people of other religions and faiths. The Catholic social teaching, however, which we have talked about and which are the premise and the basis in this booklet, invites us also to engage the other, to encounter the other sincerely and in all genuineness and truth, and to enter the world of the other so that together we can fashion the coexistence that we need. And so, with these few expressions, we need then to increase the efforts to create alliances across international frontiers. And so please remember and take with you always this: businesses and workers are not commodities. Good business is good for the common good. And so we wish to thank you and encourage and commend you for organizing this, for having undertaken the translation of this booklet in Thailandese. And we trust that all who take this in their hands will find it a big help and aid in the exercise of their business and in helping them to overcome the divided life experience that may come their way. Thank you for your kind attention, and thank you for listening.